All right, 1-point perspective. Perspective meaning how we see something, how we're perceiving it. 1 point because we're going to pick 1 point and everything is going to vanish at that point. So it is actually called a vanishing point, where things seem to disappear. And I'll show you what I mean. So in this, I'm going to do the middle one first. And I just put the dot right in the middle of the paper. I might adjust it. We'll see. See, I'm going to go corner to corner. My dot may be in the wrong spot. I wasn't off by too much. Okay, so that dot represents our vanishing point, and we would create whatever it is. Maybe we would have a train track going off into the distance. Maybe we would have buildings. So we would be on a street that's a very long street going off into the distance. Maybe it would just be a hallway, or it could be anything. It could be a country road. It doesn't even have to necessarily be a road, but for this, while we're learning, this is easier. Okay, and then for this one, I'm not going to use a ruler this time because it's not going to help me as much. I'm just going to make the same angle. So if I created this is what I should have done first, horizontal line right at our vanishing point, I would create these angles off of it. So whatever this angle is, it should be mirrored on the other side. And now I'm going to create the top of my picture same way. This angle mirrors this one on the right. So this picture would be if you've got maybe something wider, you want to focus on the foreground rather than what's off in the distance. This is just good for either way. And this right one, let's draw our horizon. I'm going to do my two equal angles, so I got to draw the other side. The bottom. So this one would be good if we were drawing like a cityscape that had really tall buildings. The one on the right would probably showcase, be able to put more detail into our buildings if we pick the one on the right. So I don't care where you put your dot. I don't care where your horizon is. But before we actually begin a final draft, you want to think about what is your picture going to be of, and what might make it easier to make your picture look better. I'm going to do this on a big sheet of paper so we can start drawing in some details. I'm going to draw my X first, because that way I can figure out my horizon. If I'm trying to do the middle dot, it would probably be easier just to do the X first. And maybe it won't be perfect. It's okay. Alright, there's my dot. I'm going to go ahead and throw my horizon in. Okay. Make sure your lines are light, because we're going to have a lot of erasing to do. And I will probably let y'all use maybe black felt tip, or maybe even just a pen, so that when you go to erase, you're not having to worry about erasing the lines that are supposed to be there. But okay, so let's just start drawing a building. So if I make I think the easiest thing to do would just be to make a rectangle. So this top of the building, even with my horizon, I'm going to come down again, even with my horizon. And then I went all the way down to my cross lines, but you don't necessarily have to do that. I'll show you that in just a second. So here's my first building. If you want to be, the more you use your ruler, the more spot on it'll be. But for your rough draft, I wouldn't worry so much about that. And later you may add in windows. Just keep in mind those windows are going to match your lines. So this line and this line are going to be your top, oh that's the bottom, your bottom and your top, so that they make sense with the building getting smaller as you go that way. You could, let's say this one started here, but I don't have to bring it all the way down to this line. It's just there as a guide to know where my angle is on the building. So on this one, now I went all the way to the top, but so I went all the way to the top there. On this one, the building is set back a little bit. And then we'll go back eventually and get rid of all these lines in between, and it'll start looking nicer. So you'll just add in buildings, buildings, buildings. Maybe experiment with it. You're going to be doing the first ones in your journal. So maybe start with the outside one time and see what happens with your buildings. Because sometimes buildings should be, right next to each other. So maybe I would have a building that's set back, but who knows, maybe it would be taller. So I would, let's see, even I gotta think about it. Have that, and then it would be back here. I'm gonna say my buildings are all about the same width. Yours don't have to be. You know what? I just totally did that backwards. Good thing I have an eraser. And I did light lines. So once I erase those lines that are going in between, that building starts to make more sense. It looks more like it belongs there, right? You can add trees. Let's say I was doing a big row of trees. I would have my biggest tree here. The next tree down is going to be both skinnier and shorter in every way. So it doesn't have to be buildings. It could be some kind of, landscape. But for this first one, I'd really like y'all to get a hang of buildings. So if you want to throw some trees in between, sure. But let's practice buildings. All right, I think I'm good with that. So horizontal, make your rectangle. Remember, if I bring this one all the way up to here, like I brought it all the way up on this one, I brought it to this one. These are the same height of building. So maybe this one would be wider. Maybe this is actually too skinny. Maybe this one is a hotel though. They don't all have to be identical. And once you feel like it's good, maybe you'd come back with your ruler and make those lines darker and more like, yes, this is my building line. I like it. It's permanent now. This is like your imaginary city that you were creating. Just make sure these bottom lines parallel with this. I think I got a little off. And see how bad this line is? I mean, it's not bad, but it's wonky. That's why I come back with a ruler. Nice and dark, nice and straight. Look how awesome that is. Now, if I had, this is where practicing in our journal will pay off, because if I had started here, I would be like, oh no, I'm gonna have to erase these really dark lines and stick something in there or put a tree or something. Now I know I should probably start outside and go in. That's what I'm thinking. That's my plan. But for now, I'm gonna throw a tree in. I'm just gonna make sure that my tree is so dark that you can't see this line anymore. And then you could also use your value and stick your sun somewhere and know that left side of that tree needs to be darker than the right side of the tree, right? Maybe my tree is casting a shadow. Maybe it's even casting a shadow onto the building. Like, who knows? Now you know extra things you can add in once you've got all your buildings in there. And I would maybe this tree is too small compared to the one I did over there. Whatever's on the right side, tree-wise, try to make them in proportion to each other. So this one seems like a giant of a tree, where this one's really small. So maybe one of those would change if this was a final draft. Building-wise though, buildings come in all shapes and sizes, so you can really play around with it. But just think, we have a door in each building, right? That door is going to need to get progressively smaller. And if you're not sure how small to make it, add in another imaginary line here. So if my door height is here, see, I made that one too short. I would need to make the door come up to there. Does that make sense? I don't know why I'm asking you on a video, but I imagine you're saying yes, sure, it makes sense, or no, I'm not sure what's going on. But you can add in other lines to help you gauge things like, if I were to make another tree and I wanted it to be the same size as this one, I know that my trunk is going to go about right there, and the tree itself is going to go to about here. And those should be roughly the same size trees. And then I'm going to shade the left side. I went too far. Okay, I'm just playing around at this point. So if you have any questions, let me know. You can let me know in comments if you are on YouTube right now, but otherwise ask me in class. Thanks.